The silence of 3:17 a.m. has a particular quality to it, doesn't it? It's not the gentle hum of the world settling down, nor the first stirrings of dawn. It's a deep, almost oppressive quiet, a vacuum where every tiny creak of the house, every distant siren, feels amplified, stretched thin across the vast expanse of the early morning. This was the silence that enveloped Sarah's small apartment, a silence she usually found comforting. A soft, familiar blanket after a long, draining day spent navigating the demands of her high-pressure job. She'd been scrolling, mindlessly, through the endless feed of other people's curated lives, a familiar, almost ritualistic act of digital decompression before surrendering to the embrace of sleep. The blue light of her phone was the only beacon in the room, casting a faint, ethereal glow on her face, illuminating the subtle lines of fatigue around her eyes. Her mind, usually a whirlwind of deadlines and data, was finally beginning to unwind, drifting towards the edge of consciousness. The soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant drone of traffic on the highway, these were the familiar lullabies of her urban existence. She was on the cusp of that sweet oblivion, the moment where the digital world fades and dreams begin to form. Then, it vibrated, the familiar, cheerful chime of her usual messaging app, the one that signaled a late-night text from a friend or a family member. Nor was it the urgent, demanding buzz of a work email, the kind that could shatter the peace of any hour. This was different. A low, persistent thrum that seemed to resonate deep within the quiet room, a sound that felt alien, out of place, almost organic in its unsettling rhythm. She frowned, pulling the phone closer, her brow furrowing in a mixture of confusion and mild annoyance. A notification from an app she didn't recognize. A stark, white icon against her dark wallpaper, pulsing faintly, almost imperceptibly, like a distant, sickly heartbeat. Her brow furrowed deeper, a knot of unease beginning to tighten in her stomach. She hadn't installed anything new. She was meticulous about her phone, about her digital space, a digital minimalist who guarded her privacy with a fierce, almost obsessive vigilance. This was an intruder, an unwelcome guest in the sanctuary of her personal technology. Her thumb hovered over the notification, a strange sense of unease beginning to prickle at the back of her neck, like a cold draft seeping in from an unseen crack. The message was short, blunt, and utterly nonsensical, a string of words that defied logic and reason. It simply read, "Don't look under the bed." Her heart did a peculiar little stutter, a skipped beat that sent a jolt through her chest, a cold wave washing over her. What? It had to be a prank, she told herself, her mind scrambling for a rational explanation. A glitch in the system, some rogue ad that had bypassed her ad blockers, a wrong number that had somehow manifested as a notification. Her fingers flew across the screen, a frantic blur, trying to find the source, to dismiss the absurdity, to make it disappear. She swiped up, down, left, right, her movements becoming increasingly desperate. The notification remained, stubbornly fixed, an unblinking eye staring back at her. She navigated to her app drawer, scrolling through pages of familiar icons, her eyes darting from one to the next. Nothing. The app, whatever it was, wasn't there. It was a phantom, a digital ghost. But the message, those 3 chilling words, still glowed on her screen, a malevolent beacon in the darkness. "Don't look under the bed." A nervous laugh escaped her, thin and reedy in the vast silence, a sound that felt more like a gasp. She was tired, that was it. Overworked, underslept, her mind playing tricks on her. Her imagination, usually a wellspring of creative solutions for her work, was now conjuring shadows in the digital ether. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, the cool carpet a welcome anchor beneath her bare feet, a small, tangible reassurance in a world that suddenly felt off-kilter. A quick glance in the mirror, just to check if she looked as rattled as she felt. Her reflection stared back, eyes wide, a faint flush on her cheeks, a tremor in her lower lip. She looked vulnerable, exposed, like a deer caught in headlights. The blue light from her phone cast long, distorted shadows across her face, making her seem almost spectral. As her hand reached for the light switch, her fingers brushing against the cool plastic, a sudden sharp buzz made her jump, a jolt that sent a fresh wave of adrenaline coursing through her veins. The phone, still clutched tight in her other hand, vibrated violently, a more aggressive, insistent thrum than before. Another message. Her gaze snapped back to the screen, a cold dread beginning to coil in her stomach, tightening with each passing second. This time, the words were even more specific, more unnerving, cutting through her attempts at rationalization with surgical precision. "Don't check the mirror." Her hand froze, inches from the switch, suspended in the air like a marionette whose strings had been cut. The reflection staring back wasn't just her own fear, her own startled image. It was a confirmation. Someone or something knew what she was doing, what she was about to do. The air in the room suddenly felt heavy, thick with an unseen presence, a suffocating weight that pressed down on her. Her breath hitched, a ragged, shallow intake of air. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a glitch. This was personal. This was directed, deliberate, and terrifyingly intimate. The playful absurdity of the first message had evaporated, replaced by a chilling certainty that she was no longer alone. She backed away from the mirror slowly, her movements stiff and hesitant, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an explanation, a hidden camera, anything that could rationalize this impossible situation. The familiar objects of her bedroom, the stack of well-worn books on her nightstand, the half-finished cup of herbal tea, the worn armchair in the corner where she often read, now seemed to hold a sinister edge, their shadows stretching long and distorted in the faint blue light from her phone. They were no longer comforting companions, but silent witnesses, imbued with a malevolent potential. She felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to turn on every light, to banish the encroaching darkness, to flood the room with the harsh, reassuring glare of electricity, to break the spell of this oppressive quiet. Her fingers trembled as she tried to swipe away the notification again, to delete the phantom app, to erase the words that were burning themselves into her mind. But it was useless. The messages were like digital tattoos, burned onto her screen, indelible and inescapable. She tried to turn off the phone, to shut it down completely, to sever the connection to this unseen tormentor. Her thumb pressed the power button, held it down, counting to 10, then 20. Nothing. The screen remained stubbornly lit, the messages mocking her attempts, their stark white letters glowing with an unnatural intensity. It was as if the phone itself had been hijacked, turned into a conduit for something malevolent, a direct line from the unknown into her most private space. It had become an extension of her fear, a weapon wielded against her. A new wave of panic washed over her, cold and visceral, threatening to overwhelm her. She felt trapped, exposed, every nerve ending screaming in protest. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee, to escape. But where? Her apartment, her sanctuary, her safe haven had become a cage, its walls closing in around her. She took a tentative step towards the door, her heart hammering against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence. Just as her hand brushed the cool metal of the doorknob, a desperate hope flickering within her, the phone buzzed again, a low, guttural growl this time, vibrating with a palpable sense of warning. "Don't open the door." A whimper escaped her lips, a small, broken sound that was barely audible even to herself. Tears pricked at her eyes, blurring her vision, turning the room into a watercolor of shadows and light. This was impossible. This was a nightmare, a cruel, elaborate hallucination. But the cold sweat trickling down her back, the frantic rhythm of her pulse, the undeniable reality of the glowing screen in her hand, it was all too real, too tangible to dismiss. She stumbled backward, collapsing onto the edge of her bed, her legs suddenly too weak to hold her, her body betraying her with its sudden, profound weakness. The soft mattress offered no comfort, only a temporary reprieve from the terror that was now consuming her. She squeezed her eyes shut, pressing her palms against them, trying to wish it all away, to wake up from this terrifying hallucination, to find herself safe in the mundane reality of morning. When she opened them again, the phone was still there, still glowing, still a malevolent presence in her hand, and another message had appeared, superimposed over the previous ones, its words dripping with an eerie intimacy, a chilling understanding of her deepest, most primal instincts. "Don't hide under the covers. It won't help." Her breath caught in her throat, a sharp, painful gasp. She had been about to do exactly that, to pull the duvet over her head, to burrow into the blankets, to pretend the world outside didn't exist, to seek the childish comfort of concealment, of believing that if she couldn't see it, it couldn't see her. But even that small, desperate act of self-preservation was known, predicted, thwarted. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left her winded. She was being watched. Every move, every thought, every flicker of fear was being observed, anticipated, and countered. There was no escape, not even in the sanctuary of her own mind. The silence of the room was no longer comforting. It was suffocating, pressing in on her from all sides. She could almost feel eyes on her, cold and unseen, dissecting her terror, savoring her every involuntary twitch. The phone, usually a source of connection to the outside world, a lifeline to friends and family, had become a direct line to her deepest fears, a relentless tormentor, a digital prison. She felt utterly, completely alone, yet terrifyingly not. The paradox was almost as terrifying as the messages themselves. She scrambled off the bed, her mind racing, a desperate, primal urge for an escape consuming her. The window. Maybe if she could just open the window, scream for help, anything to break this suffocating spell. She lunged towards it, her fingers fumbling with the latch, her nails scraping against the cold metal. The phone, still clutched tight in her hand, buzzed again, a triumphant, mocking sound, a final, crushing blow to her dwindling hope. "Don't go to the window. There's nothing out there for you." Her blood ran cold, turning to ice in her veins. Nothing out there for her. The words echoed in her mind, stripping away any last vestige of hope, any illusion of external salvation. This wasn't just about what she shouldn't do. It was about her isolation, her helplessness, her utter lack of recourse. The entity on the other end of these messages wasn't just observing, it was playing with her, toying with her, savoring her fear like a connoisseur of dread. It was a predator, and she was its prey. The phone was a living thing in her hand, vibrating with silent threats, its light a malevolent eye in the darkness, watching her every move. It was no longer a comfort, but a cage, a window into her terror. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. The sheer, overwhelming violation of her space, her mind, her very being, became too much to bear. This object, this piece of technology that was supposed to connect her, to empower her, was now the instrument of her undoing, the conduit for her deepest nightmares. It had to stop. It had to. The thought was a desperate, primal scream in her mind. With a primal scream that tore through the silence of her apartment, a sound born of pure, unadulterated terror and desperation, a sound that ripped from the deepest part of her being. She raised the phone high above her head. Her arm, surprisingly strong in its fury, in its desperate need for cessation, brought it down with all her might against the hardwood floor. The impact echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room, a sharp, violent punctuation mark in the terrifying narrative of her night. The screen shattered, a spiderweb of cracks spreading across the glass, radiating outwards from the point of impact like a frozen explosion. Shards of light flickered and died, plunging the room into near total darkness, save for the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds, casting long, wavering shadows. A ragged, gasping sob tore from her chest, a sound of exhaustion and a fleeting, desperate hope. It was over. It had to be over. She had broken the connection, destroyed the instrument of her torment. But even as the last flicker of light seemed to fade, as the darkness threatened to reclaim the room, a single line of text pulsed, brighter than before, through the broken pixels, illuminating the fractured screen with an unholy, malevolent glow. The words were stark, final, and utterly chilling, a declaration of inescapable doom. Too late. I'm already here. And then a sound, a soft, scraping sound, a whisper of movement against the floorboards, a subtle shift in the oppressive quiet. It came from under the bed. A shadow, deeper than the night, deeper than any shadow cast by the faint streetlights, began to stretch. It unfurled slowly, deliberately, from the darkness beneath her bed, reaching for her, a silent, creeping tendril of pure, unadulterated terror.